Hello, welcome back to Bald and Board Games. I'm Bald,
I'm bored.
and today we're going to show you how to play Delve by Indie Boards and Cards. And as I just mess up our entire scene here, amazing. Delve is a dungeon tile placement game, similar to things like Carcassonne, where you're placing tiles down and they have to be orientated in a specific way to a degree, and you're trying to get loot, get experience, and come out with the most points.
Yeah. So if you haven't checked out our videos this month, we've done Dungeon Month here in April.
Yeah.
This is the last of our 4 weeks.
Mhm.
We've done Clink Catacombs, we've done Dungeonology, and then we did Tiny Epic Dungeons. And then here we are with Delve. So feel free to check out those videos. We have how-tos as well as the gameplay, where for 2 of the 3 was PvP, and then Tiny Epic Dungeons was co-op.
We lost.
Yep, as expected. But now we're back to PvP.
Go watch us lose, because we almost won. It came down to literally like last move potentially.
Yeah. So for Delve here, there's 2 main parts, as Nick mentioned. You have your tiles that you're setting up, and then you're earning a bunch of stuff, and you have your players and your little people that help you with that. So here on the main board, as you can see, you have a dead center board. This will have your round tracker. It'll have 2 little spots where you can count your combat and spoils. We'll explain how those work. You don't have to use it. You can just do the math yourself, but this is here for convenience. And then you have 3 decks. You have your gold on the left, encounters in the middle, and treasure on the right. And those will be told to you as you see different symbols on when to draw them based if you win different battles. You'll also have your stacks of tiles that'll get spread out, and that's how you build everything.
Yep.
And then you have a little stack of experience tokens that you can earn. And then the last thing, as with any game that involves head-to-head, we have a bunch of dice.
Yes, my enemy.
So if we
My
zoom in here,
worst enemy.
we have a
But I
bunch.
love dice. They hate me. I love them.
We have a bunch of white dice. Those are the base level that you'll use in most cases.
Yep.
You have purple and red, and those will be on your character cards, kind of describing when you use the different dice, which Nick will go over.
Absolutely. All right, onto my board. Wonderful. Well, I'm playing the Kobolds today, and you can see every faction has these nice little cards here. Each faction has their own ability. So my Kobolds have the Gibbering Greed. And the way that you typically use your abilities is by spending experience. Like mine says here, discard 1 of these experience tokens, and I can gain +3. Those little coin symbols mean spoils. So I gain +3 spoils, which will explain why that could be important later on. As well, down the side of every single faction board, you have a nice reference. So it tells you about gold bags, treasure chests, the symbol for fast movement, what magic rifts do, the torch, the sun token, what that means, and then other areas you can use your XP for. So the XP, besides your main ability, can also be used to discard any number of dungeon tiles and draw that many. So you have dungeon tiles in hand. It's 3 that you always have in hand. So you can get rid of XP to discard and draw more. If you don't like the ones you have, you can place a dungeon tile violating the corridor placement rule. Steve will explain what that corridor placement rule is in a moment. You can roll 2 additional white dice. So anytime you see a colored square, there's going to be the white colored squares. On my little guy here, there are the purple colored squares, and on some of them you have a red square. Those are the color dice. So white here, purple, and of course, red. Okay. You can also retrieve one of your delvers by using an XP. So retrieve means when you have one down on the map already, you can pay an XP to pick them back up. The reason being is that you cannot move one of your delvers on the map normally. And you can use your faction ability, which I've already covered. So additionally on here, of course, you have your image of your different units, we'll call them your delvers. And everyone has basically the same kind. You have some sort of brute-esque character who rolls a bunch of these white dice. You have characters that are good at getting spoils, which are the purple dice. And then you usually have one person at least who rolls at least 1 red die, which is going to help you out. And that's really it for this area. You're going to want to keep your delvers face down, though, when you play, because part of the game is keeping your delvers a secret. So that way your opponents don't know who you're putting into a zone to try and collect whatever goods are there. I'm not going to go through and read down the fast moving treasure chest, magic rift, stuff like that. It says it plain as day on the card. You can just read that yourself. Just know that when those symbols show up on cards or tiles, they do mean something. So please refer to your faction board.
Perfect. So if we look at the game board here, as we talked about, we're going to lay tiles. Very simple. As I mentioned, you're going to have 3 tiles in your hand to start. As soon as you play a tile down, you would draw another tile. So you'll always have 3 throughout the whole game. Mm-hmm. If by some happenstance you go through all of these tiles, you got to learn how to play better. No, I'm just kidding.
The game ends.
Then the game just ends, yes. You just count up where you're at. But for this example, we're just going to show you a few of the tile setups and how they work. So for example, if this is my first tile here that I'm going to play down, as Nick mentioned, we have corridor rules. Corridors are the innermost lines. So as you can see here on the middle one, or this enter card, there is a corridor right in the middle. On this new card I'm going to play, there's 2 different corridors here on each side. That has to be played in a fashion. So for this card, you could play, or this tile, you can play in any direction because the corridor touches. I'm going to play it just like this. So now what happens, as you've taken your turn, you've played a tile, you've drawn a new tile, you're going to decide to put one of your delvers down. You can put your delver in only one location. So I would have to choose on the new tile to place my delver either on the blue or on one of the 2 corridors. As Nick mentioned, once it's placed there, unless you spend an experience token, you cannot move the delver. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play it right here on this blue. And again, it's on this tile. You can only place it on this tile on the turn you place the tile down unless something tells you otherwise. So once I've completed my turn, Nick would go. So let's say that the next tile up is this one. Nick decides, hey, I like that tile. I'm going to play it right here. Nick would make the same decision I just did and decide to put one of his delvers somewhere on that tile.
I'm going to go in the corridor.
So he decides to go in the corridor. It would then go back to me. Same thing. He would choose a new tile. And now I'm going to play the 3rd tile right here. And I'm going to take a delver and put it on the blue space. So now, if we look for a moment here, you can see there is no other way to play blue. It ends at the top. It ends right here in all directions. I have 2 delvers on that blue. Nick has one on the corridor. What would happen is my 2 delvers would come off, be flipped face up. You would count what you have, so 3 gold, 1 treasure. Because I'm alone, Nick would choose an encounter card. So that's the center deck up top. He would choose, he'd read out the whole scenario. There's then going to be some kind of test, most likely, that I would have to succeed at. I would roll whatever dice are on the delvers that were in that zone, add up the results, check it against the test. If I succeed, I would get 3 gold from the gold deck, which is in the upper left-hand corner. I would get 1 treasure from the upper right-hand deck. Mm-hmm. If I fail, the card will tell you what happens.
All right, so there's going to be story exposition here, and then you can choose if you want to do one thing or the other. Sometimes it just says flat out, you have to try a check. Here he has 2 options. So would you like to navigate the maze, or do you break the mirrors?
We're going to be a brute and break the mirrors.
All right, so you have to do a test.
Yep, so on my characters here, I have 1 red on each, 1 purple on each. I chose my 2 leaders. I would roll. For this here is 3 swords, 1 spoil. This is 2 swords.
Not 3 swords, 1 spoil.
5 swords.
That's 5 swords, 1 spoil.
5 swords, 1 spoil. This is 2 more swords and a reroll. So this is where that board up top can come into play. Mm-hmm. If you decide to use it, you can move that along to 7 on that track, 1 on the next track, and then you would re-roll the remaining die.
The one that had the reroll symbol.
And then I would have an additional spoil.
So it can be helpful to use that board to track because you're going to be counting spoils and combat, especially if they continue to reroll dice. Yes. It does come in handy. If it's a simple roll, you don't have to. You can just count off the top of your head. So that could come in handy there. So he ended up with 2 spoils, which is the test that you needed to pass. So you did not fail. There is no succeed situation here, so you don't get anything extra. You just get the gold and the treasure in the room.
Yes. So in this case, I would take 3 of the gold cards. I would take 1 of the treasure cards. The treasure cards can offer a variety of things. So for example, I took this one. It says lightning bow. At the end of the game, this is worth 2 points if you have at least 1 dragonfall arrow, which would be a different treasure card. So some of them have requirements like that. Some of them are just straight points. Gold would look like this, and it just gives you a value, 1, 2, or 3. So once that is complete, my 2 delvers now come off and come back to my little starting station. Nick's remains because the room he is in has not been completed.
Yep, the corridor is still going. So the corridor is open on this side and on this side. So it has to be completely closed for that delver to activate at all.
Yes.
And you explained that you can place this here even though it doesn't match blue, right?
Yes, so the only things I have to connect are the corridors. So by placing this one here, it just limits the blue area. For example, if someone had placed a delver there, let's say Nick placed his delver there because he went on this tile, then nothing would happen because, or he would get the encounter card, but there are no gold or treasures. So nothing would happen. But continuing on, let's say we're going to go 1 more turn each. It would be Nick's turn again, and let's say he plays this tile right here. Well, this ends this corridor. As you can see, the corridor now has a finish line. It also has the magic rift symbol. So if Nick decided to play one of his delvers over here, he has a delver that actually has the mage benefits from the magic rift. So he would play the mage there face down. Obviously, I wouldn't know that, but I would assume he would play that.
Right.
And then whenever this blue room is complete, he would get the benefit of the magic rift. Additionally, let's say the next tile that got placed is this one. There is no corridor connection in this corner. So I can play this tile however I want. I'm going to play it so it connects blue to blue. And I would play one of mine down. But now we have this sun symbol. The sun symbol is going to advance the round marker. So we're going to move that little thing 1 space up. When the round marker reaches the final sun spot, the end game would start, which I believe we get 1 additional turn each at that point. The very final tile,
It finishes the
site.
cycle. So like if you as the first player were to make it go there, I get 1 more.
Yes. So it makes it fair so everyone has the same amount of turns.
Right, where if I'm second player and I make it go there,
it's just done.
It's just done.
So very last tile we'll show in the example would be this one as it bounces onto the... So if we play this tile here, this now shows from here to here, that corridor is now complete. Let's just say I was the one to place that and played it right here. Now we have the other scenario in the game, which is a head-to-head matchup.
Yeah.
So we would each flip over our corresponding tiles. We would count up and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gold cards.
In a 2-player game, you're always going to split the gold.
Yes.
The way that it works for that is the highest combat will get the treasure in the room and half the gold. The second highest would get half of whatever is remaining, and then third would get as well as half of whatever that half. So a fourth, I guess, of the total gold in the room. So I guess actually 2-player technically then.
So it's half.
No, it wouldn't be actually. So because the second player gets half of what's left over, the second highest combat total. That's what I was just reading there. So it's the second and third get half of what's left over after the first player takes half of the gold.
Interesting. Okay, so in this scenario here, whoever wins this battle would get 3. The other person would get 1.
Yep.
So we will both roll our dice. I have 1 purple, 1 red. He has 3 white. And Nick rolled.
I got 2 swords and a spoil.
I got 4 swords and a reroll.
You have a stronger person.
I have 5 swords and a spoil. So I get it all. No, so I would take 3 gold first because I'm the winner. Once I have my 3 gold cards, Nick would take 1 gold card.
Yep.
And we would continue moving on.
Actually, I'm going to use an XP to add 3 to my spoil, which puts me at 4.
I'm going to spend XP to add 2 to my spoil.
Well, I'm still ahead of you.
And another XP to add 2 more.
So he's taking all the spoils.
Yeah, so that is using your character ability. You can add to the spoils. The spoils only come into play in a head-to-head battle, unless it tells you otherwise on a counter card. So in this scenario, Nick happened to have more spoils. He would then choose, based on this, how many or what he would get. So,
Yeah, so
either gold
if I'm
or
ahead,
a treasure.
if I'm ahead, but I'm only up to 4, then I would get an additional gold card. If I'm ahead and at least 5, then I would get a treasure card.
Yes. So that comes part of the strategy when you play these dice is to play dice that have spoils in the areas you know you're going to go up head to head, because that can give you additional gold, additional treasures, which will come in handy.
Yep.
So the last thing you need to know is final scoring. First off, there is no limit to how many gold cards you can have or how many treasure cards you can have.
Correct.
You can just keep tallying them up.
And the official end game initiation is, of course, that sunspot, or if you
Yes.
run out of gold cards.
Yes.
Those are the 2 ways the game will end.
Okay. So once one of us has triggered this final spot, how do we count everything up?
I mean, on your cards, you have little point value. So here you have a little 1 on the gold, another one. There's a 2. So there's 1, 2s, and 3s, I believe,
Yep.
in this gold area. And then, of course, you have your treasure cards, which will tell you if they add to your point value. So some of these will be a discard to use. And if you discard, you, of course, no longer have that to add to your point value. Some will be things like this. It just straight up add 4 to your point value. Or some are going to be like the one that Steve had where it said you gain additional points based on if you have additional treasure cards of a specific type. So those arrows to go with that lance. But just going to read these treasure cards, read your gold cards, add up all your points, and the most points wins.
Yeah, that's simple.
Yep.
If you happen to play like Nick and I and somehow tie, which we might do tonight,
My God.
then there is tiebreaker criteria, but please look in the rule book. It'll
Yes.
walk you through exactly what to check for. And that is it.
Yeah, very simple game, very quick game. It can be difficult sometimes, though, to place down tiles. We definitely found ourselves stuck once in a while
Yes,
where
we
we
have.
didn't really have anything we could put down except for one tile and the weirdest orientation. Something to mention, I forget if we do, is you cannot go above the board here. So this boundary line where you place the start tile is your boundary line for the north-facing route. You have to play down and out.
Yes.
And this does serve as a border. So if you were to close off this room, technically that wall is closed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it also counts as a close for corridors as well. So the only way to end a corridor is by having something like this tile that shows the corridor has completed, or by completing against the top wall.
Mm-hmm.
That is the main rule of the game. You cannot have a tile placed like this where it breaks corridor unless you use your ability by
Your
spending an
experience,
experience point. You have to play corridors together.
And on the screen, it may look like this corridor is still going because there are other corridors, but you'll notice there's a little door, a little pink purplish door in between these that separate the different corridor types. So there's actually 3 corridors on this one tile.
Yes, which can make it great to end the corridor and you can get the treasure inside, but make it very complicated where now if you want to go left or right, you have to have a corridor card. Because there'll be a lot of times you'll have a hand of cards. This happened to me multiple times. So if my hand of tiles was this,
Yeah.
I cannot play any of these 3 next to this card or next to this card
Mhm.
without utilizing the experience ability. I can go play over here, which is nice. But this does make it very difficult when you're trying to get long term into the game and you're all of a sudden like stuck in a situation. So save your experience points is what I learned last time we played.
Yeah, I think so. Both of us. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for joining us here as we explained how to play Delve by, I keep forgetting, Indie Board and Cards.
Yeah.
My goodness. I'm sorry, Indie Board and Cards. Thank you, guys. This is Bald and Board Games. I'm Bald.
I'm bored.
We'll see you at the table.